As above, so below, as within, as without. Welcome to Wheel of Ezekiel Astrology Podcast, episode 15. I am your host, Ezekiel David La Rosa. Today, I would like to take a look at the chart of Lana Del Rey as an example of how I conduct natal consultations. So I'm going to share my screen now. All right. So here we are. Lana Del Rey was born on June 21st of 1985 at 4:47 p.m. in New York City. As we can see, well, let's start with the ascendant. She has her ascendant at 15 degrees of Scorpio. So, Scorpio rising, she also has K2 conjunct at 16 degrees. So this indicates that she is an individual with a powerful depth of emotion, reflectiveness, and a psychological dependence, perception, and outlook on the external world. Ketu is inward as opposed to Rahu, which is outward. Ketu is also decrease, expressing a sort of reclusiveness as well as an energy that is subtractive of the self, even conservative, you could say, in some ways. Saturn is also in Scorpio. As you can see here at 22 degrees. Um, one on the opposing axis, then we also have Venus, which is conjunct Taurus, which is, sorry, is in Taurus, conjunct the North Node, K2, on the other polarity there. So that's a very interesting axis to always look at, the first and the seventh house. The first is the self, the body, one's lens and perception of the world, and the seventh is the other. So it's relationships, not only intimate relationships, but just any one-on-one relationships and partnerships one may have. So sorry, Saturn is a Scorpio at 22 degrees. We already said that. That's kind of a heavy thing to have in the first house, but I'll talk more about Saturn later and go through each of the planets. Um, let's see what else. Pluto, right. It's at 2 degrees of Scorpio here as well in the first house, indicating a deep emotional and psychological complex in this native. And then more also to say on Pluto later. The ascendant is ruled by Mars, making it the first lord, and also the sixth lord, here ruling Aries in the sixth house as well. So that was it for the ascendant as an introduction, I suppose. Um, Taking a look at the sun here at 0 degrees of Cancer in the ninth house. So this has to do with being or let's say it's indicative of a person who is a truth seeker, because the ninth house has to do with philosophy, religion, or spirituality, you could say. Um, Studying essentially and seeking what is actually true, whether it be academic or it be an independent study, but it's definitely a house that indicates a person having a sun in that house, or any planets really, but particularly a luminary like the sun. There's a lot of dedication, and you could say a soul mission involved in that house, uh, which she very much has expressed through publishing and broadcasting, writing, through music and song lyrics. So she once said she was trying to bridge the gap between religion and science. So I also find that to be rather fitting here. Um, Wanting to understand the deeper esoteric mysteries, which is apparently a preoccupation of hers, particularly also death and other heavier existential topics that were of much interest to her in her early life, early years, probably closer to teenage years. Um, so being born on any of the quad-angular points of the year, in this case being the summer solstice, indicates a kind of the kind of spirit that she embodies in this life. So a spirit that's um, it's a very powerful point, right? Because it's a shift of a season. So being kind of born right there on that cusp, um, fully Cancer, but yeah, it's a powerful point because it's one of the four angles. So it's that shift between dark and light. When the sun is kind of at its highest point, essentially in the sky. So that's it's arguably in this case you could say it contributes somewhat to her son being very visible, right, as a celebrity and a very famous artist. Uh, so yeah, the sun in Cancer is a spirit that seeks safety, perhaps safety and knowledge, being that it's in the ninth house, that just a kind of safety that one can find. I don't know if that's applicable to her, but it's just a thought I had. Exploring and expressing a certain fixation on the past, because Cancer is very nostalgic. This is a major theme through all her work, always referring to the past and memories, um, very heavily infused with emotions, very Cancerian. Um, Mars and Mercury are also co-present with the Sun at 8 and 16 degrees. Mercury being the way she communicates, it indicates her intellectual process, very wrapped up in sentimentality and nostalgia, right? As she associates with certain places she considers home, as well as her writing style and choice of words. Lana is also, well, or also has mutual reception with her sun and moon, given now her moon is in Leo in the 10th house at 10 degrees. So mutual reception is just that. Essentially, the sun is in Cancer, ruled by the moon, and the moon is in Leo, ruled by the sun. So that's a very good thing to have with your luminaries. It's very positive. And two houses that are actually fairly powerful. The 10th more so because it's an angular house here. So the moon in Leo in the 10th house at 10 degrees. Need one say more, really? This is Lana's public life image and fame that comes via her expression of the inner, right? The moon, the lunar qualities of the thoughts and emotions that she expresses in a very glamorous, romantic, creative, passionate style, which is very Leo. And then the moon being the ninth lord, hosting the sun, Mars, and Mercury. The moon is significant of the inner life, dreams, and aspirations, the ability for imagination. And just to quote Lana here, she says, I knew I wanted to do something creative. I didn't think I'd have the luxury of doing something like that because I didn't know anyone who had pursued anything that they really adored. But I had dreams of singing or writing, which is exactly what she ended up doing. So very fitting. Uh, so, okay, right. Those are her two luminaries. Uh, so let's move to Mars now that we already kind of start touching on. It's here in the ninth house. Fallen in Cancer, though. Um, it's in an applying conjunction to the sun. So Mars is considered to be under the beams in Hellenistic astrology here with only 8 degrees of separation. And that can be kind of challenging. honestly. So Mars being uncomfortable here can be extra impulsive, irritable, still ambitious with a strong desire for recognition. It could also signify the type of Mars archetype that she is attracted to. So the kind of males that she feels drawn to could be that. Yeah. Well, also the way she asserts herself in the world. It's also indicated there. Mars signifies self-reliance, so a fallen Mars indicates a lack of self-reliance as a major struggle. It also indicates where she puts her energy, which is in publishing music and writing song lyrics, which are ninth house topics. Having a fallen planet as the ruler of the chart indicates an extra challenge in the areas that the planet rules and how the native expresses, since it is the dispositor of the first house of self. Mars rules passion and libido. Fallen Mars can express this in a very direct and not necessarily healthy way. Mars is also the lord of her sixth house of health, illness, daily routine, work, and enemies. The sixth house, which in whole sign is Aries, right? So next, still staying in the ninth house, let's look at Mercury at 16 degrees Cancer. Uh, Mercury is in an exact trine to Ketu here in the first house, and also to the ascendant. Um, it indicates she has a very introverted intellectual process, which comes through the way she communicates, which is not just her lyrics, but everyday speaking as well. Being introverted doesn't imply she is super private, though, about her life, as the opposite is true in a way here, indicated by Mercury being in the ninth house of broadcasting and publishing. In her case, song lyrics about her personal life and past relationships. Mercury here is also indicative of exploring other subcultures, as she is known to do, um, mainly Latino subcultures, and of course also African American. Um, she lived in Miami for a time, and that's where she drew a lot of inspiration for her album Ultraviolence. And there's been some controversy about that, but anyway, it's showing up right here. Lana has said that her music is 100% autobiographical. So you see that connected here with how she expresses her autobiography through lyrics and writing, publishing it, being that it's in a trine to the ascendant, which is the most personal point in the chart, and also the south node, which is very going inwards. So it's very reclusive. So she's coming from a very deep place. Being Scorpio is a very deep, deep sign. She has Saturn and Pluto co-present there as well, so those are very heavy planets to have there as well. So it explains very well why her music is so emotionally heavy. Uh, yeah, she's apparently has lived through a lot of very heavy situations. Well, anyway, so moving on to, well, actually, I was going to finish. I had a few more things I wanted to say here. My notes. Mercury is the eighth and 11th lord. The eighth house is about romanticizing the past. In this case, Cancer. It's about death, abuse, loss, and then also the theme of sex in a more taboo dynamic as the willing victim, you could say, which she has depicted herself in some of her videos. The seductress or the other woman as well, as she's referred herself to be in lyrics. The 11th house is Virgo. Uh, it's about social groups, networks, artistic talent through singing and writing, though she may also have a bit of a perfectionist complex here. Virgo tends to be very perfectionist and also a workaholic. So, strong work ethic. In spite of not having any planets there, it's indicated by that Mercury in the ninth. That's the link of how you read that. When you have empty houses, you look to the dispositor, the ruler of the house. So wait. So yeah. Anyway, next we want to look at Venus, which is here in the seventh house at 14 degrees Taurus, which is so perfect for just who she is. I mean, just really, you just kind of have to look at her, honestly, not to be superficial, but Venus in Taurus in the seventh house. That's perfect to describe her, really, or just visually, just how uh, her aesthetic is very, very Venusian indeed. Venus in her the ruling sign, feminine sign of Taurus. So she's a very, very feminine woman. Um, so right, her aesthetic is largely indicated by Venus here in the seventh house, conjunct Rahu as well, which just amplifies it all the more. Rahu is considered to be the head of the dragon, which is a insatiable beast whose hunger can't be satiated. So there's this constant wanting more, kind of leading to excess. So Venus, the Empress, is in her garden here, receiving an enormous amplification of the Venusian qualities, bring out very sensual expression through glamour with her unique blend of fashion, heavily influenced by 1920s and 1950s classic or vintage, which meets 1960s and 1970s pop Americana. However, this Rahu in Taurus is also indicative of excess, sensuality, but more so perhaps because it's the seventh house. This strongly suggests an overly dependence on a romantic partner, which really one just needs to listen to her music, and it's full of references to dependence on a partner, of needing someone else there to stabilize. So uh, that's clearly indicated there through that placement. And other things too. The whole chart as a whole really cohesively speaks to that theme, but that particular placement there is very fitting. So opposing the ascendant, um, which is just it speaks to a challenge. Basically, having that placement of Venus Rahu opposing the ascendant speaks to a challenge in matters of self-value and self-esteem as well, right? Because the first house is and the ascendant is all about the self, so how one sees oneself. So yeah, Venus opposed, obviously her aesthetic is very important to her to be seen in a good light in a very Venusian way is obviously very important for her self-esteem, probably more so maybe than other people. But yeah. Anyway, this is so magnificently expressed um, in her song "Young and Beautiful," which you may know from the film The Great Gatsby, as well as many others. That was actually, I think, the first song of hers I may have heard that I recognized to be hers when I started listening to her music. I really love that song. And well, the lyrics of it essentially are, "Will you still love me when I'm no longer young and beautiful?" So that phrase always kind of stuck with me as kind of getting into the mind of a woman of her age, dealing with those emotions, potential insecurity, and just really not just a woman, but just anybody really. From their lover wanting to know, that it's not just a surface superficial love that one isn't just appreciated for their beauty, but even if that fades, whatever external they have to offer to still be loved is such an important thing. And, well, just listen to the song and essentially that the spirit of it is so fitting of that aspect in her natal chart. Okay, additionally to this, in case I took note of this because I thought it was very fitting. Lilith is co-present with Venus and Rahu as well here in the seventh house. I don't normally look at Lilith, but just because it's in this particular placement, I found it was noteworthy to mention. So this is kind of expressive of the dark feminine, defiant, rebellious, and decadent. This isn't to say that these qualities define who she is as a person, but they are aspects of her persona that do come out in her lyrics, her videos, and film themes. So like the Tropico short film is a prime example of this. It was released along with the Ultraviolence album to kind of go along with it visually. And so I just recently saw it, and yeah, definitely you can see the Lilith expressing right there. Um, yeah, it was a controversial film, somewhat disturbing to some people, maybe. Um, but it's a very raw expression, so that it's not apologetic in any way. It's really just her expressing an aspect of herself, which being a Scorpio rising, you know, and all these other placements, the Moon in Leo, the Venus in Taurus. I mean, there's just so many things that it's very fitting of that. Um, uh, what's more is also that Lilith is also making an exact opposition to Pluto, which is here at 2 degrees Scorpio. So this is absolutely magnifying the tension of the dark feminine, the dark feminine archetype expressed through her image persona in taboo themes such as sex, drugs, abuse, domination, and submission. This It's also indicative of this fascination with dark fantasies coming through very visibly with Pluto being in her first house, which again, her lyrics also do have that element in there. Um, all right, so next we're moving on to Saturn, also here in the first house. Saturn's retrograde. So yeah, I'm actually going to touch on that here in a minute. She's got a couple planets retrograde here, which is of note. Um, but anyway, Saturn here is indicative of the struggle with self-identity and self-esteem, differentiated from her confidence, which she clearly has with her moon in the 10th, which is in Leo, right? As well as her first Lord Mars conjunct the Sun, making a sign-based trine to the ascendant. Saturn is indicative of the melancholic themes of loss, abandonment, guilt, longing, depression, and overall emotional heaviness in her music. Also being counternormative and an outsider. Saturn retrograde is indicative of what area needs extra development. In this case, self-value and mastering emotional dependence on others. So that's kind of a core life lesson here for her is developing that self-confidence and not relying on other people emotionally so much. Saturn in the first is also indicative of her challenge to reconcile both her own and everyone else's temporality. Uh, the wound of mortality, the finite, further indicated with Chiron in the eighth house. She spoke about this theme early in life. She was caused great distress upon realizing that she and everyone else she knew and loved was mortal. That was kind of a shock to her. So that's kind of where I'm seeing this really showing up, this Chiron in the eighth house that has to do with endings and death. Uh, that's kind of a wound of hers, you could say, her prime wound here. Um, and then this whole wearing her wound on her sleeve is expressed via that dynamic, right? You could see with the moon in that sextile here, exactly 10 degrees Gemini to 10 degrees of Leo. And the moon is right emotions, but then here's her pouring her emotions out in the public realm. That's what I mean by wearing her wound on her sleeve here, essentially. Saturn also rules her fourth house with Jupiter retrograde at 16 degrees Aquarius. Very fascinating. Let's see. Yeah, so Jupiter Jupiter in the fourth here indicates that she had a stable childhood with supportive parents, at least a supportive father, I'll say, uh, but a supportive home. She is very studious of subjects like philosophy, religion, science, metaphysics. though her approach is counternormative. That's kind of indicative by the of the Jupiter retrograde that she's into Jupiterian things. They're prominent, but in a counter way that is usual. What Jupiter normally would signify. She goes about it in a kind of a contrary way. So it's a bit unorthodox, you could say. Uh, Her early home life was also marked by lack of direction, counter morals from her Catholic upbringing, and problems with her early education, alcohol and drug abuse, for which she was sent to boarding school to essentially force her to get sober. Saturn also ruling her third house of education, with Neptune at 2 degrees of Capricorn. So that's indicative of the drugs and alcohol in her early education with peers, having to do with early environment or just your general environment, neighborhood. But in her early life and education, she struggled with drugs and alcohol, which is a pretty well-known story about her life. Just watch any documentary on her. And Jupiter retrograde in the fourth house in Aquarius is also in an exact T square to the nodes, which could indicate the qualities of expansion, but paradoxically in ways that are counter to both self and which is overly introverted as well as to others, overly extroverted or overly dependent on others, which is exacerbating her sense of alienation, loneliness, and difficulty making friends in her early formative years, as she has stated was the truth. Her father, which is a very Jupiterian figure, has been quite supportive in her career, even co-writing a song with her called Sweet Carolina. Uh, he actually also kind of served as a sort of manager for a time. I don't know if he was officially her manager, but he kind of played that role, is my understanding, until she signed with a different manager. And also in her private life, she has also donated to several charities, which is a very Jupiter and Aquarius theme. Um, so it's in her private life, so she may not have made a lot of noise about it, but nonetheless, it's something that a piece of information I came across. And then in regards to her mother, because the fourth house can also signify the mother, Lana has expressed having a very difficult relationship with her, saying, quote, I was always an unusual girl. My mother told me I had a chameleon soul, no moral compass, pointing due north, no fixed personality, just an inner indecisiveness that was as wide as the wavering and as wavering as the ocean. End quote. So, right, that's just her side of the story, but from her account, it sounds like her mother was not supportive and actually very critical and not very compassionate toward her, and they didn't really have much of a relationship, and it's unlikely that they do now. But in any case, so that's Jupiter there, kind of bestowing its blessings in the home, but also detracting a little bit because it's retrograde, and so it's not as benefic maybe as one would hope if it was direct. Um, that's what I'm seeing anyway with that. And also Saturn retrograde, so that's she's got actually like 5 planets that are retrograde, which I'll get to here in a minute. Once they start stacking up, then you know that's really speaking to something, a major theme in her life. But anyway, moving on. Right, I wanted to finish up actually saying something, another piece here on the mother, that it's indicated, this poor dynamic is indicated with Venus and the moon being square, uh, as you can see here. The Venus is in Taurus and the moon in Leo. So 2 angular houses there. That makes a square and 90-degree hard aspect. So that brings out feelings of abandonment and resentment for being sent away as a teen and for being misunderstood or accepted as she was struggling with her addictions and sense of identity. Um, to seek support and find safety in other people and to have a home, is another Jupiter retrograde in the fourth signification, which is disposed by Saturn, which is also retrograde in the first, ruling the second house of Sagittarius, which is the house of support. Um, so, right, you can see there kind of a little bit of lacking support, and she's got Uranus there, which is a bit of an erratic, unstable quality. So, yeah, lacking support, though she may have had all the material needs, maybe more emotional needs, and yeah, other things that money and wealth can't buy weren't necessarily provided in the sense. Um, so right, there's that kind of a theme of home and ending up being wherever you lie your head. That's kind of the kind of a vagabond, which is something she has been quoted saying. I don't have the exact quote here, but essentially she says something to that effect. Um, of people not being able to relate to her, so her not bothering to talk to people that can't relate to that kind of life of not having a home, not having security. All very Cancer, Sun and Cancer themes, or stellium and Cancer in this case. Um, but anyway, yeah. Now I want to talk about the retrograde planets in her chart. There's five in total in her natal chart, and this includes the three outer planets, right? Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune, which is very curious, and then also additionally Jupiter and Saturn, as we already mentioned. So here's my take on what that means. Lana Del Rey is known for being retro in pop culture, incorporating elemental aesthetics from the 20s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, and the 90s. So this kind of throwback to the past is very prominent in how she expresses her things through her life. But being born at that time when all three outer planets, which rule the collective and are indicators of social trends and the collective imagination, um, which are the transformative forces that evolve the human collective. So being born under that energy of all three outer planets is very, very fitting then to see how through her art, her music, her expression, the theme is always going back to the past. So she was born during a time when that was kind of a trend to kind of, or she basically started that trend of kind of going and looking to the past, but bringing it back into kind of a modern context because she wasn't entirely just living in a world of the past. She somehow had a way of mixing it and melding it with the present, so it was still very relevant to the time. So a very strange of well, wouldn't say strange, but very very clever. Well, no, what's a better word? Very her artistry of weaving. That's a good word. Weaving the past and the present together in a very unique way. I guess is very expressive of that. The retrograde planets. Uh, right. So being born in this time in the mid '80s when that was the energy that she later embodied, right? Moving forward. And then Saturn retrograde is indicating her love of old and vintage things, collecting things for their sentimental value. Um, I heard her mention that she created a scrapbook with cuttings pasted in different pictures out of newspapers, maybe magazines, so that kind of thing. Um, Jupiter retrograde indicates the curious controversy that her early days as an indie artist, when she used to go by the name Lizzie Grant. Um, so basically, in spite of coming from a fairly wealthy family, she chose to move into a trailer park in New Jersey, allegedly for artistic reasons and just for aesthetic purposes. Kind of, I guess, to find inspiration as kind of a starving artist, I guess. Um, though Lana has also stated that she literally came from nothing. So the Jupiter retrograde could indicate both scenarios. One being rich but pretending to be poor, just for aesthetic purposes because she could do it, she wanted to. Or number two, having come from a rich family but for some reason being cut off or choosing not to take or ask family for money to build her music career. So that's perhaps her just wanting to prove something to herself. With Jupiter retrograde and Aquarius, there's the theme of wanting to relate to the common person. So being indie too, she just wanted to be, be relatable, though also not entirely fit in. So yeah, so you're kind of a misfit both ways, not entirely one or the other. There's strangeness about her that does stand out from the rest of the mainstream pop, particularly if you look at 2011 when she first came into prominence. The rest of pop music, as atrocious as it was, she was very, very refreshing and very much stood out from what was playing on most radio top 40s charts. Um, she is quoted saying that, quote, I have a personal ambition to live my life honestly and honor the true love that I've had and also the people I've had around me. I want to stay hopeful, even though I get scared about why we're even alive at all. I think that fits Jupiter retrograde pretty well. She does have a sense of honesty, and which is a Jupiterian thing, quality, though maybe it just somehow has come across to the general public as not being entirely, but her intentions at least are to be uh, to be honest and honorable. And then, as optimistic as she is, she here admits that her insecurity of being scared at times, and so it's kind of that optimism sometimes waning a little bit, even though for the most part it's still pretty prominent, and she seems to be hopeful and optimistic. But that's I guess normal for most people, even the most optimistic people to at times also become doubtful and unsure of things. Um, And then I guess to finish now, I want to talk about some notable transits. So May 5th, 2011, uh, her first and most important single, Video Games, is released on the internet. And at that time, Neptune was at 0 degrees of Pisces in her fifth house. So how fitting is that? The fifth house is the house of creativity. And it also, I find very fitting because it sort of ushers a new era for music and the internet, this whole DIY Tumblr scene, because that video is very famous for being self-made. She made it herself, just using some very basic tools that were very new at the time. Uh, just like stock footage and then some shots of herself. So that whole DIY kind of Tumblr vibe, that's kind of where she put that out first. I think that's actually the site she released it on. The sun was also exactly conjunct natal Venus at 14 degrees Taurus. So how fitting is that, right? The sun illuminating that Venusian quality just in the seventh house of other people. Yeah, that's pretty pitch perfect there, I think. Then also the moon was also at 11 degrees Gemini conjunct natal Chiron, which is at 10 degrees Gemini. So I found that kind of odd, but worth mentioning because I think it perhaps indicates the beginning of a new cycle toward emotional healing. That's one way to read that. So the moon conjunct Chiron, you can kind of see that as a new moon in her own personal cycle with Chiron and the moon, just the moon conjoining. I could see that maybe having a little more of a healer quality because this is kind of the launching of her journey through music, which one could say has probably been a very healing thing for her to be able to express all these things through her music and put them out there for the world to also be able to heal through her music. I know Lana's music has helped many people to heal from their own emotional wounds and trauma. So I find that very fitting as a transit. Then also January 27th of 2012, Born to Die. Her second album, but her first really famous album is released worldwide. On that day, the sun was conjunct natal Jupiter in Aquarius and also opposing the natal moon in Leo in the 10th house. So there you go, the 10th house of public affairs, getting that opposition from the sun. to her moon. Then also Venus transiting her fifth house was exactly sextile to Rahu in Taurus and in a trine to Ketu in Scorpio. Also incredibly powerful and fitting for that release date. And then on November 9th of 2012, Paradise, which was really just an extended version release of Born to Die with additional tracks. It was like a special edition released later that year. So it was released as the sun is conjunct her ascendant by 2 degrees at 17 Scorpio, right? Her ascendant is 15 degrees, so just 2 degrees away at the most visible place of the chart. As it was also the beginning of her Saturn return, right? That's the other thing I wanted to note here. Saturn was at 4 degrees Scorpio, which was conjunct her natal Pluto. So, this is the launching of a very transformative period in her life, or, the beginning of that, along with the Saturn return. Certainly very challenging for her, but it was essentially what kind of made her into the person she is now. So, right. Those are my notes on this chart. I encourage people to study it further. If you really like her music, or if you don't know anything about her, just take this information, listen to her music in context, and you can kind of see how things really do match so well. Uh, let's see. All right. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this reading of Lana Del Rey's natal chart. I'm thinking I'll probably do more of these here in the future. There's other people that I think are very interesting to explore their charts. So let me know if you enjoyed it and if there's any particular person whose chart, famous person, right? So whose chart I should do an analysis like this of. So thank you for listening. Consider supporting this work if you find it of value. And also reach out if you'd like to have a natal consultation with me. I am offering sessions. Just reach me via email or get a hold of me on social media, Facebook, even on Substack. However you like. Email is probably best, but I'm pretty reachable. So thank you for listening to this episode of the Wheel of Ezekiel Astrology Podcast. As above, so below, as within, as without.